Luke chapter 5. So we start with review, so that's where our first review question comes from. We're going to start with our review questions on Jesus. Jesus told Simon Peter he would be catching what? Men. How was Jesus' teaching different from the teachers of the law? This is now from Mark 1. He taught with authority. Very good. After Jesus healed Peter's sick mother-in-law, what did she do? Right? She got up and started serving them. It's like she was so healed, she didn't need any recovery time. She was just ready to go. A person who is made well of the disease of leprosy is called what? This one. Clean? Yeah. How did the paralytic's 4 friends get him to Jesus since there were so many people around Jesus? This is Mark 2. Through the roof? Yep, down through the roof. Why did Jesus eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? Mark 2, 16 and 17. Right. He was like a physician taking care of the sick. And then also another reason is because he had just called Matthew, who was a tax collector, and so, he had invited his friends, to hear about Jesus. Why did Jesus' disciples not fast while he was on earth? Yeah, because he was on earth. Because he was with them like the bridegroom still being at the wedding party. Yep. What was the miracle Jesus performed by the pool called Bethesda in Jerusalem? What did he do there? This is in John 5. Heard something. Yes, that's the crippled, the paralytic.
He got up, took his mat.
Yep, he got up, took his mat. Very good. On what day of the week? Yep, Sabbath. Are you looking at my notes from way over there? Wow. Okay, yes. Okay. So on the Sabbath day, which we'll get into in our lessons today, so that's important. What we learned last week is important even for today because we're going to continue the discussion about, healing on the Sabbath. And then, whose will did Jesus obey? John 5. His Father, God. Very good. Very good. And then, who was the Old Testament prophet whom Jesus said wrote of him? Okay, Good guess. Yes, Isaiah is one that probably read about it. We learned from Mark that if you have to guess, Isaiah's, in this case, it's not Isaiah though. At least this specific one I'm looking for. No. John 5. I'll give you a hint. It starts with M. See, we don't really think of this person. Moses. I don't know. Maybe the question wasn't worded well because do we think of Moses as a prophet? Yeah, so maybe I need to edit that. Maybe not so much a prophet. But anyway, Moses. All right. Now we're going to go even further back. Yes, I know. Joseph. Just a few of these. Pharaoh said Joseph's family could have what kind of land in Egypt? Best. Very good. What claim did Jacob make to Ephraim and Manasseh? This is another one of those questions I didn't particularly think was well worded. Like, so Jacob makes maybe it's better to say, a special claim to Ephraim and Manasseh. What was that? So in other words, they're now Jacob's sons. I wonder how that made Joseph feel. I don't know. I guess he felt good about that because it was both his sons. I don't know. All right, now to Daniel. What did Nebuchadnezzar say God could do to those who walk in pride? Daniel 4. Humble. He's able to humble them. At the feast, what cups were used for drinking wine? Daniel 5. Yes, the cups from the temple of Jerusalem. They're like bringing in the spoils and they're enjoying their feast with these gold and silver vessels or cups. Again in Daniel 5. Yeah, that's a good answer. His knees shook. He's seriously freaked out is how we would say it in today's words, I think, is he was freaked out. So yes. All right. Very good. All right. To start off with for today's lesson, we are in Mark chapter 2, the latter part of that, starting in verse 23, and then we'll go into Mark 3. So if you want to turn there, this is, if you're keeping track on your sheet of lessons, this is lesson 36. So first up, we have, again, a question about the Sabbath. And they're walking by a field. Jesus' disciples start picking the heads of grain, and the Pharisees start complaining, right? Because it's on the Sabbath day. Now, why is this a problem on the Sabbath day? Or why do they think it's a problem on the Sabbath day? Because they couldn't do any work. And, like if you go to Deuteronomy, this was one of the passages that I was able to find in my research here. Deuteronomy Chapter 23 talks about how if you go into your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat your fill of grapes as many as you wish, but you can't put any in your bag. If you go into your neighbor's standing grain, you may pluck the ears with your hand, but you shall not put a sickle to your neighbor's standing grain. I thought this was an interesting passage because it helped me think, like, if I'm doing work, if I'm really serious about harvesting, I'm not a farmer, but if I were, I'm going to use some tools to get it accomplished, right? I'm not going to be doing it with my hands because that's going to be a really slow, ineffective process to get enough grain. So I don't know. I see here the fact that his disciples are just using their hands to get, it just indicates again that they're hungry. I'm sure they've been busy doing things like, healing the sick, learning from Jesus, all this kind of stuff. And so they're hungry that day, and they get some food to eat. Sounds like just for that day because they're using their hands. So that's my thoughts on this. Jesus uses an example from the Old Testament about how David went into the temple, did something that wasn't according to the law, but given his situation, was okay. And I think that was the point that Jesus is trying to make here, is that, like, yes, God gave you the Sabbath, but it's meant to help you, not like if you're hungry, God didn't intend for you not to eat. So again, the Pharisees have already shown that they're frustrated with the fact that Jesus is doing things on the Sabbath. They can't seem to get the idea that, Jesus is doing good. I don't understand that. But what? Well, let's go one more example. So now in chapter 3, he continues to do something on the Sabbath. And I guess let's jump to the end of this account. They've had enough. They're like totally fed up with his stuff he's doing on the Sabbath. Maybe it's also combined with the fact that he is drawing huge crowds. We're not really told what, but we do know that verse 6 of Mark 3:6, the Pharisees went out and immediately began conspiring with the Herodians against him as to how they might destroy him. Now, my understanding is the Herodians are not somebody that the Pharisees would typically have dealings with. They are not like very similar groups, so this is kind of special. This, again, shows how badly the Pharisees wanted to get rid of Jesus.
Are they Jews or Romans?
I'm not sure as far as what their, background is, but I do know that they were sympathetic with, Herod, right? That's why they're Herodians. So again, the Pharisees didn't want the Roman rule there, but yet the Pharisees knew that they could use this group over here maybe to get rid of Jesus. Does that make sense? They're definitely. My understanding is the Herodians are sympathetic to the, Roman rule. Boy, it seems that way. Now, I kind of skipped here just to kind of show what reaction the Pharisees had. What was the other thing that Jesus did here in the beginning part of chapter 3?
He healed the withered hand.
Yes. And I think it's over in the Matthew 12 passage where he asked them, you would help your donkey on the Sabbath, if it was in need, like it got stuck in the ditch. Why wouldn't we heal this person that's been, injured for so long? Why wait? So then my application for this section, yes, it does seem how I get frustrated with the Pharisees. I'm like, why can't they see? But then I start thinking about, well, what is it for us? Like, what is the Sabbath for the modern day Christian? Like, what is it that God has given us that he intended for our good to help us, but that maybe we're missing the point at times? Can you guys think of something maybe? Okay. Yeah. Okay, not to be, I see what you're saying. Maybe not to feel like we're better than those who maybe haven't heard the gospel, who have sinned and we're sinners. Okay. Maybe that's one way, is to remember our condition. We're not necessarily better than those who, Exactly. He was very sympathetic. I'm trying to see if there's something that we do today that is kind of like what the Pharisees did with the Sabbath. Like that we feel like, like maybe it is something that God has given us and that we should be doing today, but we almost like maybe misapply it or misuse it at times and go beyond. Right.
But sometimes we have made it very legalistic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just going to give an example. We want to take a group of the kids and go sing for somebody at a nursing home or at their home.
Mm-hmm.
So we leave the building, go do that.
Uh-huh.
And some people might think, I don't think so much now, but some people might think, oh, but you need to be here.
Oh.
You need to be here.
Right. Yes. Well, there's definitely, I mean, in my notes, I haven't like written out specific things that I was thinking of. So just so you know, like it is a discussion, but that's, I think, a good example is how we treat assembling together. Like at times I feel like we maybe go beyond what I think is it Hebrews, not forsaking the assembly. Like for example, with, your example, or even with how we used to do with COVID when it initially hit and we were live streaming. Some congregations, some people, from what I've heard elsewhere in the country, had a hard time with like, well, if you're streaming, are you forsaking the assembly? And like, how does that work? If I can't, if I can't meet with my brothers and sisters, let's say that we were meeting here, but we were also live streaming, which we are, is that person then forsaking the assembly because maybe they've got health reasons? It's those kind of things. Or to your point, like well, for one, we shouldn't be judging our brothers and sisters, but there is like in our mind, like, oh, brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so hasn't been to church. We have that checklist mentality where you've got to be at church. But we can come to church and just be, thinking about other stuff, right? It's more than just being here, right? So,
It's just a matter of, as Christians, to not be so judgmental.
yep, not to be so judgmental. And then there's a balance too, because we love each other, right? And so we want to encourage each other to be like Christ, but then there's the other end of it, like, why weren't you here on Sunday? Like we don't want to like, or you were here, but then we think that that's all that there is, and we're not like trying to have that relationship with people and really see if they're growing, right? Right. Any other things? So we've mentioned maybe, how we assemble.
I'm just going to say, like, other places and in the past,
Uh-huh.
there was an issue with, like, your appearance and what you wore.
Yes, that's a good one.
A child who wants to wear dirty pants and flip-flops to church, and I just let her because I'd rather her be here and be comfortable than make an issue out of her wearing dress clothes and not want to come.
It's interesting that you brought that up because I noticed that even just this morning, how, I even noticed that this morning, and I'm like, you don't compare your kids, but it was like they were right there, and I'm like, what a contrast. Just in like, I'm just like, hey, because I know how she feels about it. We've talked about it, and I'm just like, yes.
Does God care what we wear?
We were taught. Yes, we were taught.
Gave God your best, and you dressed in your best.
Right. That's where the idea. That's where the idea comes from.
General teachings about not favoring the wealthy, well-dressed people in your congregation.
Right.
It's like spelled out.
Right. Yes. That is where that idea came from. Yep. Exactly.
Well, and I'm not dishing what you're doing, okay, but
Yeah, I
I've
know.
heard some people say, a friend of mine has said to me, some people will get more dressed up to go to a, say, concert or a wedding or something than they will to come and worship God. And so she has a little problem with that, but,
Right.
But I have another one for you.
Okay. I think I saw Jason, and then we'll come to you.
Well, I mean, the larger issue here is just, this is a group within the group thinking. The Pharisees were a group within the group.
Okay.
And I think anytime, you can probably cite hundreds of examples of groupthink within the larger group. And I think that's what we need to avoid is, going to particular pet ideas, those sorts of things, wherever they come from, whether they derive from generations gone by. Because this is groupthink, they sort of emphasize what they wanted to emphasize to the detriment of
Others.
or even to the detriment of the intent of the law.
Gotcha.
They don't see that. They didn't see their neglect of the weightier matters of the law
Right.
for their groupthink.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think in the larger point for us, we need to avoid that
Mm-hmm.
group within the group. Because we are the body of Christ.
Right.
Paul came down pretty hard on.
Subgroups, like are you thinking of like from Apollos? And yes. So we need to avoid the groupthink. We need to what's that? Subgroup. Sorry. Groupthink is, I guess it goes back to how important it is to be following the scripture, and like such an effort needs to be made to come to the scripture as best we can without those made up, like, this is what the scripture says, so I'm going to find it there. Like, really see what the Bible's teaching us to try to avoid that subgroup think. And
We have the expression, I will die on this hill. Like, what hills will you die on? What are you willing to sacrifice everything else for? If it's not core biblical teachings that brings people together, fighting for the wrong hill.
there you go. Very good. All right.
Not to beat that horse down, but you get on the internet if you want to do this. You can find people in Church of Christ who oppose everything and anything. They won't contribute to Christian cause. They won't contribute to orphans. They won't have bottom class. They fight everything. And I think this might be on Jason, like the groupie thing. Nothing. There's no positiveness in their writings at all. It's all works of righteousness. It's very pharisaical.
And they missed what I think what made Jesus so upset with them was, the two commandments are love God and love others. Love yourself. And he was healing people. He
Right.
was caring about people.
Right.
And they were more concerned about
A thing that was intended to be good. Right. Yes. I think that's a good maybe summary. Again, we need to be in the Word, making sure we're doing what God says, and those are, some good like double checks. Like, is love involved here? How does this show love to others? How does this show love to God? It's a great point, because they were missing that Jesus is helping people. They're like, who told you to pick up your mat, or whatever it's unlawful for you to do that. It's like, I'm healed. Like, did you notice that? Right? So it's things like that. All right, very good. Very good. Now, it moves on in the next section here, starting in verse 13. Talks about how that Jesus, from his disciples, he calls, he selects some, and we know of these as apostles. I had missed what apostle I had been using it, and maybe I knew at one point what apostle means, but it was a good reminder that it means someone sent with a commission or command. They had a special commission, and we'll see that in other passages maybe about what they were going to be doing here soon. But what I wanted to do here is just point out and notice the interesting mix of backgrounds that Jesus selects here for his 12. We've got fishermen. We've got, a tax collector. So right there we've got some, tax collector, he, as we've already talked about, he's an outcast. A former rebel, perhaps. Yeah, a zealot. So he was a former member of like a rebel group trying to overthrow the government, basically. And then you can also throw in, like, yes, Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him, but still, he was part of the group. So my point here is, wow, what an interesting mix of people. Jesus didn't select all fishermen. Boy, then they would have, something in common. He didn't pick everyone that was, well-liked or going to naturally get together, bond right away. I think this is a great lesson for us. I just recently, heard a discussion about how that this is like maybe one of the downsides to some of our online groups that we can choose based on, particular interests. They do seem to get very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're all the same. Everybody in that group has a similar interest or something like that makes them that group. And their point in this discussion is that that's one of the benefits of having a local church. We're not all the same. We don't like all the same things. We're gonna rub each other the wrong way, if you know what I mean, occasionally. But their point is that that's good. That's how we grow. That's how we show love to each other. If we never had any of those, moments where, would we need to love each other if we always treated each other in the perfect way? Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
God loves us all the same. We are all the same in his eyes.
Right, we are all the same, but reminders of that, and being in a mix of people that aren't, all programmers, or whatever it is, all Buckeye fans, or whatever that group is, right? We are forced to get along, and we'll miss that. So that was one of my observations from his selection of the apostles.
Did you say this is the program for church?
See what I mean? And then I wanted to mention, kind of along that same idea, is that a lot of times, or don't be surprised when people close to you hurt you. You know what I mean? Like, it happened to Jesus. People close to us are probably going to have people close to us, right? Like that we know that God's going to be, our avenger. He's going to take care of us. We can still show love to those people. What is the saying? Those who are closest to us maybe know the ways that's even easiest to really hurt us, because they know us better than others. And so we need to be, I think, especially aware of that and be, be prepared to be extra loving in those situations. I don't know. But, yes.
I was raised in a Methodist church until I was 24, and then I came to the Church of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
With them just going to certain things that they always picked out, that's what they taught you.
Mm-hmm.
I really, when I went and started teaching in the little kids' classes, because I needed to know what they know.
Uh-huh.
I had to start way down there, because I thought, well, the disciples were perfect people. And
Yeah.
all these people were perfect, and I have a long ways to And so it, it was an eye-awakening. I mean, I'm like,
These are real people. They're like me, right? Yeah.
that I hadn't heard and I had gone since I was very little.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. All right. Any other comments on anything there in this section in Mark 2 through 3-ish? Any other comments? Yes.
Just a comment on the diversity of
Yes.
the apostles. They didn't always get along either.
Right. They didn't.
They had arguments and they had
Like, who is the greatest among us? And
strong discussions.
right.
Yeah, and because you had some strong personalities, there, and
Yes, that's a good
so,
point.
they didn't always get along, but they all kept the focus, because they all ended up being martyred except for John, who was exiled. Their focus was on
Doing the will.
the Father,
Yep.
especially after Jesus' return.
Right. Right. Their focus, especially after his resurrection, they were definitely a great example of how we should be in the church, focused on doing the will of God. Right. We don't always have to agree on everything. That's true. There's going to be conflict, just like there was among the. But it's how we then handle and respond to that. Again, going back to the love each other. All right, we've got about 5 minutes to cover Genesis 1. No. So, this is lesson 37. This is what the kiddos will cover on Wednesday. I think then what I'll do for the next 5 minutes-ish is emphasize and just remind us some kind of maybe good foundational things maybe that will help us moving forward, because we are shifting from, big shift. We're going from Jesus all the way to the beginning here. Genesis is written as, history. It's in that literary style. It's not. I've heard, or I think it's been argued that maybe even the first part of Genesis, and then maybe it transitions to more of a history style, but that the first part was more kind of poetic, and I don't see that in Genesis. I see it as history. Now, the caution there is that we've got to remember that Genesis was written by Moses to, the Israelites, to the Hebrew. And that culture of, nomadic shepherd culture, not to our modern day scientific minds. Okay? Does that make sense? So we got to make sure that we try our best to read this first through that mindset, and keep that in mind. What I was reading made a good point that with our modern English translations, it's easy sometimes to forget how old this. How long ago it was written and to who it was written. And for example, when it's talking about the various types of animals or plants, they didn't have our modern scientific classifications of plants and animals. Okay, so that would be one observation. Let's see. The main point of this first, section about creation is to contrast between what really happened with creation versus what you would have I mean, I guess what they could have potentially heard, like, for example, there in Egypt, and the idea of how the world was created from, like, the Egyptian concept, and other world religions at the time, how that, it was not from a creator who created. It was, I mean, you guys, again, to borrow Don's, if you guys want to get on the internet, I did this last night while Jen was driving. I was like looking at different, even world religions today, like Hinduism and Buddhism. They have some pretty different ideas about how the world came into existence. And the Bible stands in contrast to those beliefs. There was an all-powerful creator. He created, the way he created, he spoke. I worked so hard creating, a buggy piece of software, and I work, and I'm not even like working with, like what you would think, like out in the field, like construction. I'm like, just typing, and that still feels hard. And here, God, something out of nothing, and he just speaks it. Wow, so that's the difference. You read others. So anyway, so if you want to research that, I won't, since we don't have much time. I had some of that stuff just to share with you, but it is definitely different than what we read here in Genesis.
My whole family believes. My daughter's a Buddhism or whatever. The other one is an alien theory. My mom thinks the Bible is just a storybook. So that's hard in itself. Coming from a family that doesn't believe in the Lord.
Yep.
And
That is hard.
So, but I was there, I guess, at one time. So it's something that's very hard.
At least I take some hope or encouragement from, the scientific, at first I thought like, oh, the Big Bang, like, and I was frustrated. Now I look at it a little differently in the fact that if science is pointing to a beginning and a Big Bang, and then there was something that happened, an event in time, like that was the start, I think that's good, because that kind of fits with, and God spoke, God, it's indicating that there was a start, and then you can at least start having a discussion about, okay, well, what started that? Anyway, it's an amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. As a Christian.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the foundation I wanted us to have, at least going forward. So next week we'll start with, I guess, chapters 2 and 3. Just keep that in mind this week as you're reading the passages. Try to imagine yourself as, at that time you're reading this, not so much with our scientific minds, and the contrast between what they would have been hearing about, almost man-like gods who sort of, somehow stumbled to make the world, or I don't know, I'm not doing a good job summarizing that. But anyway, the contrast there. Any other comments on, I know we had to breeze through Genesis, but I wanted to at least get us a start for next week. All right. Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, okay. That's an interesting start. Okay.
He said, if I come from nothing and I'm going to nothing, then what does it matter what I do in between?
Right. I mean, that's...
And for people that, I think sometimes as Christians, we expect the world to act Christian. And
Right.
they don't have the Spirit. And so that's
Yes.
the thing to keep in mind.
Yes, that is. And that is... That shows why they're acting as they do. That's a good summary of, if you're an atheist, why does it matter what you do? Yep. It's a good point. So we shouldn't be surprised how they act, I think is also your point. Yep. All righty. Well, thank you guys.